Great. So today we're excited to share with you how technology consulting fits into Eide Bailly as a whole. We'll talk about my journey to technology consulting, what technology consulting is, and then we'll talk about Kat's journey to technology consulting because it's incredibly relatable to what your careers are progression can be. So I know that you guys have probably seen something similar to this. So Eide Bailly, right? We have over 40 offices and we're focused west of the Mississippi for our physical locations. So from our core services, we have what we call our technology consulting, and that's where Kat and I fit in. So our goal in technology consulting is to make sure that we are business advisors to the businesses that we have and also bringing in new business to Eide Bailly. So just a little bit about how did I get into technology consulting? So my undergraduate degree is in finance, which I always say to accountants like, hey, finance people undo what you guys do with all your accruals and stuff and figure out how much money is really there. But I do love accounting too as well. But so I started my career in commercial banking, and that was just straight out of college, and I was working as an underwriter. And then 2 years into my career, there was a real estate crisis. And in that real estate crisis, what ended up happening, there was a recession. There was a lot of loans that were going bad, and then there was a lot of new government regulations that were coming down the pipe. And what those government regulations required was different types of reporting on the loan portfolio. And so it really required a lot of analysis and taking a look at business intelligence. So, because of that crisis, the new opportunity came up to be able to work with a business intelligence system. And that was something that was incredibly interesting to me. I wanted to let you guys know about that is that oftentimes, when we have these recessions, when we have things like these pandemics, what's happening today? While the opportunities and jobs as the way that they existed before, there is always opportunity in disruption. And it's a matter of making sure that you have your eyes open and that you're looking for opportunities that come your way. I love this graph here because it really shows like we kind of expect that our career is going to work in just this nice linear line. But what really happens is we have this time where we're building this foundation and then whoop, you have a nice period of growth. And then you think, oh, great, everything's just going to grow and grow and grow. And I'm going to be going on this great trajectory. And then all of a sudden you're kind of stagnant. This is what we call, this is from my MBA time, a punctuated equilibrium, right? Where these periods of growth come rapidly and then there's a period of stabilization. And to just grow like this, that's definitely not real life. Yes, there are some of those unicorns who have their startups at 21 and, sell for $1 billion, but most of us are really on this reality projection here. So as this real estate crisis was happening, my ability and opportunity to look at the business intelligence system, I was also getting my MBA. And so from there, after banking, I ended up going into industry. And so I worked for a juniors fashion retailer at their corporate office. And I worked within inventory management, merchandise analytics, and planning. So I really was able to take the basis of what I learned from technology, which had nothing to do with my degree, right? My degree was in finance. It wasn't a technology degree. But because I had industry experience and business experience married with competence, you can then create other opportunities within your career. So over that time, I was able to have some great growth at that company. And then I found out about Eide Bailly. So I'd always known about Eide Bailly. I live in Fargo and I went to school. My undergraduate is from Minnesota State University Moorhead and my graduate degree is from NDSU. So I like to say I'm a fire-breathing bison. But what I had no idea that Eide Bailly was anything more than a bunch of accountants. And so I was at a TEDx event for, it was a women's telecast, and I ended up sitting and having lunch with somebody who was in Eide Bailly Technology Consulting. So we ended up having a conversation, and that really piqued my interest about how could I take all of these exciting things that I was learning in one business, and then be able to always be working with companies on who have these incredible challenges, right? You got to solve a challenge and then move on to the next challenge. And that's really what drew me into Eide Bailly and working in their technology consulting. And that's where I've been for the entire time. So I work with something that's called ERP, and it's called NetSuite, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Any questions so far? Great. So technology practice, we exist to serve the modern challenges for clients. When you get into accounting, you are going to wind up getting all sorts of terrible financials and information that's awful to sift through and really ends up costing the customer a lot more money than what they would have to spend if they would have a good system. So that's what technology consulting really helps drive. So just a little bit about our practice. We really focus on being problem solvers, right? Our goal is to solve the problem and then have technology that supports that solution. So some of the softwares that we represent, so Salesforce, which is a customer relationship management software, NetSuite, which is an ERP, and we'll talk a little bit more about those differences in a little bit. And then Microsoft, and we also do Sage. So our team consists of more than 225 people within Eide Bailly. So it's not quite 10% of our staff, but we're rapidly approaching that and really having a lot of growth within our technology consulting. Most of our consultants have experience other than just being a consultant. So that's that part when we go back, to this journey to technology consulting. What you're doing in those first few years after your career, really, or after you get into the workforce, is really focusing on building that knowledge. You'll probably feel like I want to be progressing more quickly, but those skills that you are gaining in those first few years really make you a better consultant in the future. So here's technology consulting. What we have is we have our advisory services. We always say in a company, their problems fall in one of three categories. It's a people problem, it's a process problem, or it is a technology problem, right? And so on those three pillars, that's what our advisory team comes in. They go in, they assess, and then they help provide a roadmap and solutions. On our cloud and security team, so we offer hosting. Many companies don't have physical servers, right? It used to be that everybody would have their own server on premise, right? And that really caused that you had to have the skill set in your business to have a person to be able to upgrade. Now with cloud technology, it's much like your iPhone, right? You just wake up and it's updated. Everything else is taken care of. And so that's what some of our cloud and security services help with. Security, that's helping to protect businesses against scams, right, or phishing attacks. Data security is one of the things that keeps most CEOs up at night because the risk of losing their customers' data or secure information is very high risk. Then on ERP, that's really where we take things like the financials, right? Inventory management, what really becomes the backbone of a business. So we have various ERPs, and so we work with those businesses to convert them from maybe it's something like QuickBooks, or maybe they have an outdated ERP. It's really doing heart surgery on a business because that business needs to remain running while we help create those efficiencies with the new software. And that's where Kat works in. And so she'll give you more information on that. And CRM, that's customer relationship management. Sometimes a CRM is within an ERP, but CRM as a whole, you can think about that as all of those emails that you wind up getting, right? You go to a website, you put in your email, and then you get all of these drip campaigns, and they collect this information over time to do more targeted marketing to you. And our real big thing, and this is the emerging thing that's happening within the technology space and is incredibly exciting, it's data analytics. So it's being able to take all of this data from all of these different places, aggregate it, and then have actionable insights on which businesses can make adjustments and changes to. Yesterday, I saw something that was incredibly fascinating. It's a data analytics platform that what it does is it takes a company, right? So let's say I put ABC company in, and it knows the address, and it goes out into the web and pulls all of this information and then creates insights. It's looking at job posting boards, it's looking at press releases and aggregating it all in one place. So you'll be able to look at that company and decide, hey, and understand, is this a company that could be a viable target for us to market to? Have they had increased job postings? Did they recently announce some type of expansion? Or is this something that we maybe need to wait because we just saw the press release that they had layoffs? So this data analytics, that's really the next phase of what technology consulting is really going to be able to do, and really incredibly powerful. Companies like Google and Amazon are some of the earliest adopters of data analytics, and with their size within the industry, it just shows the value that you have there. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. So you said like you represent those companies, right? Or
Yeah.
those. Are you kind of like a salesperson then, in a sense, for them?
Yeah, so my role, I actually work, I work with business development people all throughout the country. So they are actually representatives for NetSuite. And then we sell the implementation services, but we have other arms of our business where we sell both the software licensing, and we do those services. So we could become what they call, it's called a partner. I'm sure in your classes you've heard of these strategic partnerships, right? So instead of the software company hiring an army of salespeople, they enter into these strategic partnerships with companies like Eide Bailly, and our salespeople sell their software while providing supportive services to maintain it and to install it. Did I answer your question?
Yep.
Great. Any other questions?
I have a question. So you're
Yeah.
saying you offer like the consulting and the software. So I
Yeah.
know like when like let's say a new ERP system, it's going to be easier for other levels of workers within like the company to like grasp it and move. So like when you say consulting, are you like helping others understand and move forward like that, or is it just like strictly the software?
Yeah, it is. It is very much doing consulting and process improvement. I just got a message, and then these, I need to go on Do Not Disturb because then I get distracted. Um, Oops. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so what we do is we do these things that are called discovery sessions. So that's when someone like Kat goes and talks with them and understands their processes, right? So after there's an understanding of process, Kat would offer advice, right? She would say, hey, you guys are doing this process in this particular way. Based on what we see from industry standards and your requirements, we really recommend that you make a change in your process in order to be more efficient. And then we help configure the software to make sure that that's happening. So for instance, an example of configuring the software, let's say that you have 4 different layers of approval for some type of purchase. We can make sure that automatically, as that goes through the process, that it's emailing the right people to get those approvals so that there's not a bunch of paper going around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and that's why it's important, right, to really, as you are going through your accounting journey and working in the accounting field, to be curious and be curious about how they're running their business. And you'll see so many different businesses when you're in public accounting, which gives you so much knowledge. You can see those successful businesses and understand what are some of those things that make them successful, and see some of those non-successful businesses as well. And now that knowledge that you have, that makes you so valuable in the consulting space.
So basically it's just coming from a lot of experience, because I don't think I've ever heard of like a class that would come around tech consulting.
No, there's not really a class with tech consulting. Now, there are consulting skills that you can build, right? When I first got into consulting, one of the things that I said was, oh my gosh, this job is 101 different ways of me saying I'm going to get back to you, because I didn't have the answers, right? And so it's a matter of having good people skills, good critical thinking skills. I would say if you have any choices in any of your class selections, where I found most of my critical thinking, the best growth in critical thinking came from my economics classes, because that way of thinking just really translates well into the business world. So if you're not taking any economics classes, you could read some books like Freakonomics or Super Freakonomics. Those are great books. And being a lifelong learner, always, it's not necessarily, when you're in college, you're not going to find it interesting. But Harvard Business Review, after you're out of college and once you're working, you're really going to find a lot of value from reading that. And that's going to make you a much better accountant, much better business person. And if consulting is something that you're interested in, it will help you be a great consultant as well. Any other questions? I love the questions.
I have a quick one.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with like maybe an older business owner that's having trouble or doesn't want to switch over to like a new system?
Yeah, that is very carefully. So sometimes you just bait and switch them. No, I'm just kidding. It really involves a lot of conversation. And what really speaks to that is having an understanding of customers' needs. What are their pain points, right? So if I can go ahead and fix a pain point for them and I can get them a great return on investment, then that makes that decision easier. But people have to be open, right? And one of the great things about consulting that I say is that you really learn a lot of good boundaries, right? And so there are companies that I know that I've seen who have failed, and who have failed because they didn't adopt technology. And that's not something, like, the way that I sleep well at night is knowing that I've provided the information, but ultimately their choice is their choice. Any other questions? And did that answer your question, Dawson?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of customers like that don't want to switch to the new technology?
I usually don't have very many conversations with people who don't want to switch technology, because it's not my job to convince people. My job is to help people who are looking for solutions. So it's kind of like your friend, right? Like if your friend is complaining about the same thing all the time, you've offered some advice, but they're unwilling to change, you kind of just quit investing in that portion of it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You guys got great questions. Okay. So how do we help clients, right? And we will get this slide deck out to you, right, Carrie?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we can
great.
definitely get that sent out to them.
And so Dawson, this really kind of goes back to what you were saying, like how do you get them to see it, right? You can reduce the risk, cut their overhead costs. One thing that I've written about is about how your ERP is really your most valuable employee, right? When you think about the work that your technology is doing, you need to start thinking about that in terms of how many employees is this actually saving me, right? And then investing in that and continuing to grow. Okay, so our reach This is one of the things that I absolutely love about working at Eide Bailly. So I've been with Eide Bailly for about 7 years, right? And I live in Fargo, North Dakota. And what I love is that I get to work with clients all across the country, right? Like I've gotten to go to Manhattan probably like 8 times. It's been amazing. And I get to go to all these great places in Manhattan. I go to LA, Austin, all these. It's just so fun. But I don't have that high cost of living, right? And I don't have to worry about the traffic like you do in LA. So that's what the great gems I think about Eide Bailly is that yes, our physical office locations are west of the Mississippi, but you're able to work with companies all across the United States. So here's just a few of some of our clients, right? So like Traeger Grills or Squatty Potty, which that one's a fun one to just have. We even have health and beauty companies. So like CO Bigelow, which is the nation's oldest apothecary. They also license their health and beauty products to places like Bath and Body Works. So it's really fun to work all across these various businesses. So any questions before I hand it on over to Kat? Great. It's your show, girl.
I'll be honest, guys, I'm not nearly as good at talking as Trina is. She's an expert at that stuff. But I do just want to lend some perspective because I know it sounds like most, if not all of you, are accounting students, and it's not been that long since I was in the same position you guys are. And it's kind of a weird thing to understand how you can get from where you are now to where like Trina is. And I'm somewhere in between. So the first thing I want to talk about is I know it feels like you're kind of being funneled to audit or tax when you come out of an accounting degree. And I know that I was frustrated with that when I was a sophomore and a junior in college. And because I went into an accounting degree right after the financial crisis. I went into college right after the financial crisis. And I was only getting an accounting degree for job security. That seemed like a high return on investment to me, but I didn't know if I really wanted to be an accountant. And by a very fortuitous chain of events, I got in touch with Eide Bailly. And one of the biggest themes you're going to see in my discussion here is mentorship. And Eide Bailly provides that for days. And I think that's what sets us apart from any other firm. And so I went to job fairs, got in touch with some folks from Eide Bailly. They were always the most kind and supportive and really willing to get to know people. And that's how I became an audit intern. And it was really on a whim because I didn't know if I wanted to be an audit or tax. I didn't really know the difference. I really didn't know what auditing was truly. So I got this internship, and what it turned out auditing was getting to work with high level leaders at all sorts of organizations, a different challenge every single week. None of the boringness, I think, that some of us associate with accounting. And some of you guys might be really into cost accounting. I was not really into cost accounting. And auditing provided an opportunity to see so many different layers of the business and see it at a really high level. And in the process of auditing, as Trina was talking about, you see a lot of those pain points. You'll be shocked, even as you intern, if you already have interned and in your first years, the number of things that you ask for from an organization that seem simple and seem like this is kind of a necessity to have, that they can't pull. They can't get that data. Simple things like, I need the value of your inventory. Sometimes that's really hard to get a hold of. So those are the types of things that I ran into as an auditor that kind of just started to pick my brain, like there's got to be a better way to do this. But anyway, started with Eide Bailly as an intern, started in the Denver office full time. And that whole time, Eide Bailly has like a buddy system that you have your person that's kind of your go-to for dumb questions during your first few years. And they became my best friends in the firm that I'm still very close with. And in addition to that, you have a career advisor. And I think a lot of firms have career advisors, but with Eide Bailly, it's a very simultaneously formal and informal relationship that you just have somebody on your team that's advocating for you and looking out for you. And about 3 years into my career, I was just an associate still staff. My fiance got his dream job in middle of nowhere, South Dakota. And I basically went to my career advisor in an informal setting. She was a lady I respected a ton. She was a partner in the firm. And I said, you know what? I feel like I'm in this position that I either get to keep my career or I get to keep my fiance, and I don't know how that's going to look. And she immediately sat down and opened the doors, cleared the way, got the references for me to figure out a way to work remotely across the country, away from where we were, on totally different office, on totally different clients, even different industries than I was already working on in audit. And that type of mentorship is what sets Eide Bailly apart. That gives you flexibility and provides you opportunities to, overcome challenges that come in both your personal and your professional life. So that's just one thing I want to mention. She opened those doors, and I had partners from all over the place making it happen for me, making it happen so I could move and still retain a career that I cared about. So I moved to Chamberlain, South Dakota, worked out of the Sioux Falls office remotely for a couple years, and moving to a more rural area became even more obvious that there's a lot of people out in these in these firms and companies that don't have the technology they need, don't have the ability to transform data into useful information. So I had always been aware of the Bailly Xchange program. So the exchange program is an opportunity to basically have an internal internship. So to move to a different area of the firm, because our firm has gotten so big, there's so much that we're doing. And when you're in audit or tax or anywhere else, you're kind of siloed in your own world. And the exchange program gives you an opportunity to switch to one of those other areas of the firm for 3 to 6 months, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, and just really get thrown in the deep end and start learning and start learning what that other service area does, which makes you a more valuable employee to the firm, right? Because now you know all the things that the firm does, and it gives you a ton of information and knowledge and teaching for free. So it's a huge investment into you as an employee. And that's what I was most grateful for, because there's not a lot of, every company has the, we'll do tuition reimbursement, or we'll do this or that additional benefit. But the massive investment into somebody to train them in a whole new service area, that's a huge investment that you just don't get everywhere. I got trainings in NetSuite. I got certifications in NetSuite that I was provided, the actual training material for free, paid for me to do the training, paid for me to get the certification, provided the time for me to go take the test and get the certifications. And that continues now that I'm still on the technology side. But even when they didn't even know if I was going to stay a technology consultant, they provided that to me, which to me was awesome. And it's something that I can now put on my resume for life, whether I stay with Eide Bailly or not. I will, because if you haven't told yet, I drank the EB Kool-Aid. But just so you know. So did the exchange program for 3 to 6 months, or for actually 6 months, one summer. And again, I was provided a mentor that just took me under her wing and had kind of been down the same route I had done some accounting in her previous career, but had made the switch to technology consulting similar to the way I was considering it. And, she was able to provide just such transparent, honest, ongoing advice and point out my strengths as a consultant, point out any weaknesses I might be bringing to the table, and to have that mentorship to say, hey, this is the route I took, and this is kind of the route I see you taking. What do you think? Was huge for me. So she laid it all out on the table for me and showed me that, the opportunities in technology consulting are huge right now, as you guys already know. I know that you guys already get that spewed to you a lot, probably in your programs, but take it to heart, because it is true. There's no business out there that can continue to be successful and grow unless they can get that data into actionable information. And there's no way that I could have understood that if I hadn't had my accounting and auditing background, because just like Trina said, you can't get that experience really any other way than being knee deep in it, in the mud. And one thing that I had a partner that always told me in accounting was, in public accounting, it's like a ladder, right? You're climbing the ladder. But in public, for every year that every one rung of the ladder, or every year that you're in public, you're climbing 3 rungs of the ladder. You're getting so much more experience in a single year of public than you could really in industry. And that might not be true at every organization, but it's always true in public accounting. You're always going to get 3 times the experience, because you're seeing so many different businesses and so many different ways of doing things. That then you can bring all that wide breadth of knowledge, knowing what works, what hasn't worked, and you can bring that to consulting and go into so far I've had a huge range of companies, from nonprofits to manufacturing, everywhere in between, that I can go in and say, you know what, I've seen this before, and I don't think this is working for you. Is this a pain point? And it usually is. And that's because you've already seen it when you were an auditor. So that experience from accounting and the in-depth knowledge of the technical side of things really means that you already have the hard part figured out in about 5 years, or however many years you're being an accountant. You come into consulting, you've got the tough stuff figured out, the technical stuff, and now you can bring your other skills, your speaking skills, your problem solving skills, those critical thinking skills to a client and really provide the full package. And it's more fun, honestly. As an auditor, as an accountant, you're kind of your own pain point in and of yourself to the client, and then you come over as a consultant and you're out there solving problems instead of kind of causing them for the client, which has been the most fun thing for me. I love my clients. I have a great relationship with them, and it's really fun to see, you know, some of their issues become automated and easier and just make their lives better. So that's kind of my spiel into technology consulting. What I do on a day-to-day basis is, like I said earlier, to solve problems. Clients come to us with, you know, either we broke this and we don't know how to fix it, or, hey, this is just way too clunky and bulky and I can't do this business process that I need to do in an efficient manner. Can you help? So I get into the nitty-gritty of their system and figure out how we can automate it or get rid of that pain point, or how to just make something work that's very unique to their business. Every business is unique, and there's no system in the world, I don't think, that is, you know, automatically going to fit every single business. So there's always got to be somebody that can go in and customize it and make it work. My little picture there that I do just, again, want to point out with the mentorship of all those people on the mountain, that's a group of managers, associates, seniors that, you know, I just went back to Denver a few weeks ago and we're still hiking together and hanging out, not even in their department anymore. We're still close. And the fact that all those people still work for Eide Bailly, super low turnover, that's a big deal. And I think both the auditing and accounting and tax world and the software and technology consulting world, we've got a good group of people here that want to help, and you can't grow in any industry without those people that want to mentor you. So I will shut up for questions.
Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps up their presentation part of this. So we have about a little under 10 minutes, and we want to leave the floor open to you. I mean, everything that they talked about, even I've worked here for 3.5 years, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. So definitely want to open it up to you guys. I know you asked some questions already, but Kat just shared a whole nother, you know, side of things. So does anyone have questions for Trina or Kat? Yeah, Grace, go ahead.
So do like the backgrounds of people in similar jobs to your guys's, like, are you guys usually like accounting majors, or is it just all over the board?
So I can take that, Kat, if you'd like. We have people who have Masters of Fine Arts as their degrees, right? And have gotten in through consulting and just from working with businesses. Then most people have some type of business background, I would say. It doesn't require an accounting degree. An example for myself, right? My undergraduate is finance, so it's not accounting. I would also say we have a lot of economics graduates as well. But it for sure requires a degree. I don't think we have anybody without a degree. Would you say, Kat? That's one of the things I love too about working with Eide Bailly. So when I was in industry, right, like I would always just be like, oh my gosh, I'm working with all these, maybe this is judgy of me, but like all these people, and I wish there was like a higher caliber, right? These people to mentor me. And then I got to Eide Bailly and I was like, everybody's smart. Like everybody's smart. And it's so awesome. And it's just to what Kat was talking about. It's because everybody sees all of these businesses, right? And it's people who are naturally curious and people who like to solve problems. So it's so many smart people. So it's so fun. We're maybe not as funny as in other places, but we think we're funny.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I had one. How do you guys help them convert from their older systems? Is it a lot of like manual data entry, or are there like programs in certain like ways you guys help convert them?
Yes. Both of those things.
So I can give one example of like automating with our data analytics practice. There sometimes people hold on to their data. They think it's worth more than it actually is. Like think about your email inbox. Do you ever go back to those emails from 5 years ago? No. But do you ever delete them? No, you don't, right? But our data analytics team has some of these assets is what they're called, which allows for a quick conversion and allows access to that data without necessarily having to put it into their new system. But then Kat, if you want to talk to some manual entries though too.
Well, and depending on the system, there's some pre-built apps, like especially QuickBooks. There's that problem has been addressed by the market, so that's an easy one to convert over to NetSuite. That's a huge discussion that we have in discovery is this data important? Is it really? And how much historical data do we really need to bring over? And not because we want to limit our clients, we want them to bring it over as much as they want, but you don't want to have this brand new system that you've invested so much money out of it and have it junked up with a bunch of stuff that you're never going to use, just like your current system. Why would you do that? So it seems to me it oftentimes becomes, let's bring over limited amount of historical data just for reporting purposes, because everybody's got to make their auditors happy. And then let's just bring over the most recent data we can. And sometimes that becomes manual, but manual meaning you're not hand entering stuff. Manual meaning we're mapping imports, like CSV imports. That's about as manual as it gets. So that initial mapping can be a little clunky, but once it's done for life, and your clients can use it, and you can use it over and over again. So I wouldn't say I do a lot of like boring data entry. None of that.
I also have a question. What size companies are you guys working with on average? I reckon like some of them were pretty big that I saw on the list, but do you work with any smaller, like hometown companies within Fargo or other places? How does that work?
Yeah, so Bushel, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. So they are a software startup here in Fargo. They are one of our clients. Heat Transfer Warehouse is another client here. And then we have clients, like as big as, bidding on work for Make-A-Wish Foundation. So that's really one of the beautiful things is that you get to work with the smallest companies and you get to work with really large ones too. But I would say on average, most of our companies were probably in the 15 million to 150 million annual revenue. Would you agree with that, Kat?
I would. And one of the great things about NetSuite, and I think Trina will correct me on this, but one of its big selling points is that it's made for companies that are poised for growth, right? Because it's made to grow with an organization. So by default, then you're working with companies that are also poised for growth, which I think is the most fun. And on the audit and tax side, you're working with companies at all levels, from like wholly owned, tiny car dealerships, tiny not-for-profits, all the way up. And you can be working on those back-to-back weeks. You can go from a $1 billion bank to a tiny nonprofit back-to-back, that's where that experience comes from. That provides so much fun and experience. You're never bored. I have no desire to ever go into industry because I've gotten this excitement and this fun from, that's all I've ever known. And I don't know how I could ever go into industry after seeing all these different types of companies.
Kat, I love that you brought that up, because one of my greatest challenges of being in industry is that I would solve big problems, and then I'd be bored.
And then it's done.
And I have been here. I was always like, gosh, I can't stay anywhere for like longer than 3 years. It felt like. I'm here for 7 years and I am not bored, and I haven't been bored. And I don't even know how I would get bored. There are some boring days though. I'm not going to lie about that. Like some days you're like, oh my gosh, am I really having to do this? So it's not all like daisies, unicorns, and rainbows,
No.
but the overall picture.
One thing I will also say too is within audit, you kind of start out very broad as far as the types of industries you're working for, whether it's nonprofits or governments or private or financial institutions. You do all those for the first like 3 to 5 years, and then you start to kind of silo yourself and become an expert in a field. That doesn't mean you will never work on another industry again, because you absolutely will, and frequently, but you start to become an expert in one industry or another. And I think that starts to be true in technology consulting as well. You are a jack of all trades, but you will have an industry that you love and that you love to work with. Like, I love working with nonprofits. And you're able with Eide Bailly to drive your career that way. At a lot of big four firms, I know you cannot do that. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. But with Eide Bailly, you can kind of source your career and explain to your mentors the direction that you want to go because you really enjoy something. And that's a unique thing to be able to do.
All right, looks like we are just a little bit over time, but if people have questions and we don't want to, hop off if you do. So does anyone have any last minute questions for either Trina or Kat? All right, I'm not hearing anything. So thank you guys for joining us today, Trina and Kat. Thank you so much for sharing all that insight. Like I said, I found it to be extremely interesting too. So really happy that you guys could join us this morning. I will get those PowerPoint slides sent out to everyone. And if it's okay with Trina and Kat, I'll put their contact information in that email. So if anyone does have some follow-up questions or wants to connect with them more, you definitely can reach out to them. They're both fantastic people. So
Perfect. And
utilize.
also, I'm on LinkedIn, so you guys can find me on LinkedIn, and love to connect. And I love helping people with their careers. So I'm here to help if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
You guys.
Bye.
Thank you.